This is my first Subaru SVX. This is a 1995. It's got the most Ks on it, 740,000. The speedo didn't work for a while and had these big tyres, so it's probably about 790. It's crossed all the deserts in Australia a number of times. Used to run fully on 4 of these, as you can see, which are pretty big. The back chassis here, the body had to be cut to fit the tyre, so it was cut in there. We cut that part out of there and to make room for the tyre. So it's been resprayed since I took it off desert tyres and I used it as a daily driver. The engine's standard, but it has a manual 6-speed transmission out of an STI, has electronic controller on board, and the controller I can dial in the back or front through the DCD, or I can lock it solid when I'm climbing sand dunes and everything, so the front and back diffs lock solid and gets me over the dunes. Basically, had a couple of engines. First engine did 480,000 Ks and I filled it with mud in the desert one time in a rain shower. So what we did was we hacked into the wiring harness and we able to control the radiator fans from internally, so at low speed in sand we could keep the engine cool. We also used a switch for driving lights and the fridge. The back seat was taken out and we had a fridge and 1 spare tyre and all the camping gear and fuel. We carried 70 litres in the tank and 90 litres in jerry cans in the boot for travelling. Okay, this is a 95 SVX. It's only a couple of serial numbers later than that one there. It was exactly the same colour originally. A bloke brought it for rallying and he painted it white with house paint, and I cut the house paint back off and repainted it. He kept blowing engines because he couldn't keep it cool, so we had to solve the engine problem, a notorious one that Subarus boil at high revs, so we modified it. I'll open the bonnet. Okay, so the engine's still 3.3 litre. We've put 2 inlets into the engine to get more airflow. We run to about 7,500 RPM. Each bank is independently cooled. The thermostats are being moved from the bottom to the top on each bank, and we restrict the water flow back to the radiator. We separate the radiator overflow tank and we have an expansion tank in there. Since we put that modification, we can run it on a 40-degree day at 7,000 and never have any cooling issues. So it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing. It's got bigger cams and develops over 300 wheel horsepower. So what we have in here is, instead of the normal 6-speed, it's been replaced by a PPG 6-speed sequential gearbox, which makes it a lot better. It has Costco diff front and back, which helps with the wheels putting the power down coming out of the corner. We monitor oil pressure in and out of the oil cooler, oil temperatures, radiator temperatures, right and left bank and the heads, and the radiator return temperature, so we know what's going on. Everything's total wiring harness is hacked and then basic wire harness in. We keep big dials here because when you're in a corner you can watch the dial without taking your eye off the track with you can use your peripheral vision. So as far as we know, this is the only SVX race car around, and it tends to be pretty legendary at the racetracks. We've been to Bathurst, Phillip Island, all the major tracks in Australia. I had a bit of fun. Always a crowd pleaser with a flat 6 engine. Has a really different note that's difficult to duplicate with other engines. So the clutch in the car is a Japanese twin plate metal clutch, which because the only one we could find to stand the power and the torque. Seems to do well. It's been through a few engines. So it's a 1992 Pearl with a black roof. Pretty stock standard for that generation. There are a lot of Pearls imported into Australia. So I brought this car off a guy who had it in the Tasmanian Targa Rally. He brought it purposely and it had 120,000 K. It's got 131,000 now. He fitted it with a roll cage, racing seats and things like that. Didn't do anything on the engine. One of the classes at that event requires a car to be stock standard except for a roll cage and things like that. And that's what he's fitted to this. So everything else on it is standard, engine standard, the management system standard. In the class that they enter this, they have to cut the trim and everything to fit the roll cage, but the judges have to ignore that the roll cage cut-ins, so they pretend it's not there to judge the car. So we've got a couple of greens, SVXs, these are 95s. They're both original. This one's quite good. That one was in a crash on the door, and we picked it up thinking we'd just use it for parts, but turns out we have a spare door and a few other bits, so we'll get it fixed up. And down the track, we've got a black one down the back we inherited. That's being converted to another race car. My friend's converting it over. He's going to strip it and change it for racing because it's a bit old and worn. Over here we got another Pearl, which we picked up for parts, but we haven't done anything with. And then two Vortexes. We have another Vortex race car, which we're building up. We're getting ready to go racing with. And then we have another SVX, which is in the similar serial number to my main desert car and my race car. This one, the guy couldn't get it fixed a couple of years ago and he sent it to me and I fixed it. And so when he'd finished with it, he sent it to me and gave it to me. So one thing I forgot to mention with this car is that the ECU's been ripped out and we run a Link G4 ECU. The most common suggestion I get every time I go to the track is put a turbo on it. And I have a friend in Melbourne who has exactly the same engine and he runs a turbo. He does 850 horsepower. I don't like turbos. I'm too dumb to run turbos, so I'm happy with the naturally aspirated and I love the sound. I'm not trying to be the fastest guy in the world. I'm just trying to have a great time. Thank you all. I hope you enjoy the collection.